In 1666, the sovereign embarked on major building work. Over 50 years, he continued to extend and transform what became Europe's largest chateau, the Palace of Versailles. Architect Louis de Vaux designed two symmetrical grand apartments for the king and the queen. Louis XIV moved his government and court to Versailles. After a new program of works, Jules Hardouin Mansart replaced the terrace overlooking the grounds by the Hall of Mirrors, which became the court's main ceremonial reception room. Mansart further extended the palace to accommodate the royal family, the court, and all the government departments. With the servants, the kitchen, and stable staff, close to 10,000 people were bustling about the palace. At the end of his reign, Louis XIV moved his bedchamber to the center of the palace. This room was the hub of the king's daily ceremonial routine and that of all the Versailles courtiers. Towering over the other buildings, a royal chapel was finally built by Mansart on the same scale as the palace. When King Louis XV moved to Versailles, he broke with strict court etiquette and fitted out smaller apartments for more comfort and privacy. At the end of his reign, Louis XV built what the palace was missing, a real opera house. Architect Gabriel modernized the facades closest to the town. In 1789, the French Revolution forced the royal family to leave Versailles for Paris. The future of the palace looked uncertain. With the revolution, the royal railings, a symbol of absolutism, were destroyed. The king left Versailles for good. The collections of paintings were taken to the Louvre, and the furniture was auctioned off and dispersed. But in the end, the palace was preserved. During the First Empire, Napoleon renovated the Grand Trianon for residents during the summer months. Sometime later, Louis XVIII restored the symmetry of the palace by erecting the Pavillon du Four. Louis Philippe transformed the former royal residence into an historical museum. The former prince's apartments were replaced by a large gallery of paintings, the Galerie des Batailles. The fledgling French Republic took possession of Versailles and renovated the Salle du Congrès to accommodate the National Assembly and the Senate. Versailles today is the result of this long history. A former royal palace with prestigious collections, an historical museum, a republican palace. It's also a living place which hosts festivals and shows, dazzling as it did under Louis XIV, visitors from all over the world. The gardens of Versailles, created by André Le Nôtre, are a key component of the royal residence. They surround the chateau on three sides. In the 1660s, the east-west axis became the Grande Perspective. The gardens surrounding the palace were made up of parterres, enhanced by fountains. They are extended by paths opening onto copses with surprising lawns and water features. King Louis XIV had the Grand Trianon built in the grounds as a summer family residence and a refuge from the hubbub of the court. King Louis XV fitted out the Petit Trianon for Madame de Pompadour, and Louis XVI gave it to his young wife, Marie-Antoinette. The Queen gave orders for the gardens to be replanted in the English style and built a rustic hamlet, a working farm, complete with cottages.
One last external clip, and this is from an art history professor, so you can hear a little bit the music of the time period, but also get, I think, a very solid explanation of what really it means to be an absolute monarch, and the view that the king had of it. She also gives you a little bit of interesting background that I think is unique to the perspective of a music teacher.
That's an important phrase, the age of absolutism. These monarchs ruled absolutely, with a complete sense of divine entitlement. That's how the world worked, and almost everyone accepted it. And that's why the overthrow of the French monarchy 2 generations later in 1789 would prove to be such a shock. Louis XIV worked hard to become the quintessential model for absolutism. He took the identity of the Sun King as his logo. He made a decision to move his palace headquarters out of Paris and into the countryside, taking his father's hunting lodge and chateau, located 25 miles southwest of Paris, and turning it into the world's most impressive palace complex. Versailles is huge, but it's officially and charmingly still called a chateau, the French term for country house. It's anything but a hunting lodge today, or a country house. It contains over 700 rooms, and more than 20,000 nobles could be housed in the palace complex. The name comes from the Old French word Versailles, which means place where the weeds have been pulled up. It's fun, isn't it? From this spot, Louis XIV ruled with complete power, absolutely, if you will, for 55 years. To get into the mood for this topic, let's set the atmosphere by listening to some music that would have gone into a French royal ear. You might recognize this. It was used as a theme song for a BBC television series called Masterpiece Theatre. As distinctive as this rondo by French composer Jean-Joseph Mouret might sound to our ears, it's actually typical of the French Baroque rondo. A rondo is a very catchy piece. It's structured by a distinctive opening that returns several times with contrasting episodes in between. Grand, sweeping, and formal, even today, this rondo has become a popular wedding processional, and it would have sounded just right back then when it was played at Versailles, for it expressed in sound the absolute power of the monarch.
Remember that fancy coronation robe from just a couple minutes ago? Well, this is the image on how it was created. What you can see is essentially a paint by numbers fill in the face of the king that doesn't actually represent the way that he looked at all. He was a much older man. He was bald. He was fat. He definitely did not have that glorious back hair, nor those nice muscular calves. But as part of this propaganda image, you can see his artist really went above the board to make him strong and manly and youthful looking, creating what is one of the most famous pictures from the era and was actually painted repeatedly as a practice image by artists at the Royal Art Academy in France. To understand the magnitude of Versailles, I think it's helpful to see the numbers. To understand just how much money and time and effort went into the creation of Versailles. And if you look at it from a downward angle, you'll actually see it does indeed start to look like a king. And it is made up of just an absolute magnitude of ridiculously expensive items. You can see just the listing here, 5,000 items of furniture and other art objects, over 2,000 sculptures, 15,000 engravings, 1,500 drawings. The gardens are enormous, 150 varieties of trees in the vegetable garden, 210,000 flowers planted each year, 200,000 trees, creating 80 miles of rows of trees, 50 fountains that are connected by 21 miles of water conduits, consuming pretty readily 3,600 cubic meters of water every hour, coming out of the 620 fountain nozzles. These grounds are lined with trellises equivalent to 27 miles. So I just hope that you can understand this is expensive. A big part of what we will be developing from here on out is how this is paid for and what that extravagance does to other areas of the world.